The day that shattered my world is etched into my soul like shards of broken glass, sharp, unrelenting, and impossible to ignore. Every detail replays in my mind with cruel clarity. The sounds, the smells, the raw emotions that surged through me like a storm. It was mid-October in Chicago, the kind of dreary day where a fine drizzle falls endlessly, turning the sky into a monotonous gray blanket. The dampness seeps into everything, your clothes, your skin, your bones, making the city feel heavier, colder, more oppressive. I had just returned from New York 2 days ahead of schedule. Fashion Week had wrapped up earlier than expected, and I couldn't wait to surprise Kalen for our 5th wedding anniversary. In my mind, I pictured his face lighting up when he saw me at the door of our sprawling mansion on the North Shore, arms full of gifts, and that smile he used to reserve just for me. We had built a life together, or so I thought. I was Zuri King Khalin now, having taken his name after marriage. A successful designer with a degree from Parsons School of Design and an MBA from Wharton. He was the charismatic entrepreneur behind Apex Construction Group, the man who had swept me off my feet 5 years ago in my tiny Wicker Park studio. My heels clicked rhythmically against the polished marble floors as I entered the house, the echo reverberating through the vast, empty hallways. The mansion was always impeccably maintained, thanks to our housekeeper Ida. But that day something felt off. A premonition lingered in the air, subtle yet insistent, like the faint scent of rain before a downpour. The first sign of disaster was in the living room. A piece of black lace lingerie draped carelessly over the arm of the sofa, as if tossed there in haste, or worse, deliberately. My heart skipped a beat. Then I spotted more, a trail of discarded clothing leading up the grand staircase toward our bedroom. Black fabric, delicate and provocative, items that certainly weren't mine. For a fleeting moment, I clung to denial. Maybe Ida had been doing laundry and forgotten to put things away. But deep down, I knew better. Ida was in her 60s, practical and modest. She would never own anything like that. With each step up the stairs, my pulse quickened, thundering in my ears. The moans and laughter drifting from behind. The slightly ajar bedroom door confirmed my worst fears. The voice was scratchy, familiar, laced with that fake sweetness. I had come to recognize Sienna, my best friend, or so I had believed. The woman I had shared late-night confessions with over wine, dreaming about runway shows, future collaborations, and life milestones. So when are you finally going to tell her everything? Sienna's voice sliced through the hallway like a knife. What's the rush? Kalen replied, his tone smug and dismissive. The one that had started grating on me over the years. Let her play dress-up designer for a while longer. Her whole career rests on my money anyway. Those words hit me like a physical blow. Something inside me snapped, irrevocably, completely. Rage boiled up, hot and consuming, overriding any rational thought. I didn't hesitate. I kicked the door open with all my strength. The lock splintered under the force. There they were, in our bed. The bed where I had woken up beside him every morning for 5 years. On sheets I had personally chosen from a boutique on the Magnificent, mile after agonizing over dozens of whites. They were naked, entwined, utterly relaxed. As if this betrayal was their rightful domain, Kalen bolted upright, shock widening his eyes. Sienna didn't even bother covering herself. She just let out a nervous laugh, flipping her hair back. "Zuri, why are you back so early?" she said casually, as if we'd bumped into each other on the street. I don't recall crossing the room. One moment I was in the doorway. The next, my hand connected with her face in a resounding slap. The crunch was sickening. Blood sprayed from her nose, splattering across the pristine sheets. Sienna screamed, clutching her face. "Have you lost your damn mind?" Kalen roared, leaping from the bed. His fist slammed into my stomach before I could react. Pain exploded through me, driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, gasping, black spots dancing in my vision. "Is this you?" I wheezed, struggling to speak. "You're protecting her?" Kalen grabbed my braids, twisting them viciously. "She's Cornelius Graves's daughter. Do you understand that? And who are you?" "Some half-baked designer I picked up out of pity." "Did you really think your little sketches meant anything without my connections?" He dragged me toward the door as I clawed at his arms, nails digging into his skin. Sienna, wrapped in a sheet, stood in the doorway, fear finally creeping into her expression. "Kalen, stop." "Don't," she whispered faintly. But he wasn't listening. At the top of the stairs, he shoved me with all his might. Time slowed as I tumbled down the marble steps, an eternity of flashing pain at every impact. The final blow came when my right leg hit the baluster at a grotesque angle. The snap echoed loudly, a sound so visceral, I was sure the neighbors could hear it despite our high privacy walls. I lay crumpled at the bottom, unable to move. My leg was bent unnaturally, bone protruding through skin in a compound fracture. Kaylin descended slowly, almost leisurely, and kicked the broken limb. A wheeze escaped me. I had no strength left to scream. "Now know your place," he hissed. Sienna stood frozen above, pressing a cloth to her bleeding nose. Horror in her eyes as realization dawned on what kind of monster she had chosen. Kaylin dragged me across the foyer by the arm, leaving a trail of blood on the marble. The basement door opened to a wave of damp stagnation and old paint fumes. He hurled me into the corner. My head cracked against the concrete wall, stars bursting in my vision. "Sit there and cool off," he snarled. Then shouted toward the kitchen, "Ada, don't feed this woman for 24 hours. Let her get her head straight." He rifled through my pockets, confiscating my purse and phone. But he missed the secret lining pocket. Designer's habit for hiding sketchbooks or samples. Inside was a burner phone I kept for emergencies. The steel door slammed. The lock clicked. Darkness enveloped me completely. The cold floor leached heat from my body as pain throbbed in my leg with every heartbeat. Nausea roiled in my gut. Tears streamed unchecked. Betrayal, agony, the ruin of everything I had built. For 5 years, I had strived to be the perfect wife. I sacrificed a Paris Atelier offer, my ambitions, even my maiden name. And for what? To be maimed and imprisoned by the man I loved. Trembling, I retrieved the burner. 23% battery, weak signal, but enough. I sent my location to a number I hadn't touched in 20 years, then dialed. My mother had left my father, Thaddeus King, when I was 10. She wanted a normal life, free from his world of crime and danger. I grew up without him, achieving everything on my own merits, until marrying Kaylin. The phone rang endlessly. Then, Zuri. He recognized my voice instantly, despite 2 decades of silence. "Dad," I sobbed. "Help me." "What happened?" Panic edged his raspy voice. Thaddeus King, known on the streets as True North, never panicked. But for his daughter he did, my husband. He broke my leg, locked me in the basement. I sent coordinates. "Hold on, baby girl. I'm coming." Later, I learned he had always watched from afar, respecting my mother's wishes but never fully letting go. He knew about my education, my marriage, waiting for me to reach out. He arrived in 40 minutes. I counted each second, fearing the battery's death. Upstairs, thuds, screams, chaos. Then the basement door exploded inward. A figure in tactical gear, Cash's father's enforcer, and legend appeared. He knelt, examined my leg, grimaced. "Hang in there, beauty," he murmured gently, lifting me carefully. Upstairs, guards lay unconscious. In the living room, Kaylin and Sienna knelt, surrounded. Terror etched Kaylin's bruised face. "Who are these people?" He wheezed. "My father's calling card," I replied, a spark of satisfaction igniting amid the pain. Sienna trembled. "But your father, he's dead." "No, honey. He's alive, and he holds grudges forever." Cash has carried me to a waiting black SUV. Father sat in the back, aged but commanding, steel in his gaze. Seeing my leg, his mask cracked briefly. "To the private clinic on the North Shore," he ordered. "Prep Dr. Evans." He cradled me gently, raising the partition. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I watched but didn't interfere. For your mother." "And look how that turned out," I murmured bitterly. Silence hung heavy. Surgery took 4 hours. I awoke in luxury surroundings, Father holding my hand as twilight fell over Chicago. "What do you want?" he asked directly. Quick death was too merciful. "I want him to lose everything. Business, money, reputation. Helpless, like me in that basement." A predatory smile crossed his face. "We can do that. But it's dangerous. I'm not afraid. You take after me?" That was the beginning of my transformation, from victim to avenger. The private clinic on the North Shore felt more like a 5-star hotel than a hospital. Soft lighting, fresh orchids on the nightstand, and a view of Lake Michigan through floor-to-ceiling windows. My leg was encased in a heavy cast, elevated on pillows. Pins and metal rods holding the shattered bones together. Pain came in waves, dulled by medication. But nothing could dull the fire burning inside me. Father sat in the armchair beside my bed for 3 straight days. He barely slept, barely ate. The man who once commanded fear in every corner of Chicago now looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper, the gray in his hair more pronounced. Yet his presence filled the room with a quiet, unbreakable strength. On the third evening, as the autumn sun dipped low and painted the lake in shades of amber and blood red, he finally spoke the question that had been hanging between us since the rescue. "What do you want, Zuri?" I stared at the ceiling for a long moment, letting the memories flood back. The fall down the stairs, the snap of bone, the cold basement floor, Callan's boot on my broken leg. Quick death was too easy, too merciful. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, powerless, humiliated, stripped of everything he valued. "I don't want him dead," I said slowly, my voice steady despite the ache in my throat. "Not yet. I want him to lose everything. His company, his money, his reputation, his pride. I want him to wake up every day knowing he has nothing left, and that it was because of me." Father's eyes gleamed. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. The same smile that had made grown men tremble in the back rooms of South Side clubs in the 90s. "Then we don't kill him," he said. "We destroy him, piece by piece. We play the long game." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But understand this, baby girl. Once we start, there's no turning back. The Kalins and the Graves, they have powerful friends, politicians, judges, cops on payroll. This will get dangerous." I met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not afraid, Dad. Not anymore." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Good. You take after me more than your mother ever wanted to admit." That night, the plan began to form. Hidden cameras were installed in my hospital room the next morning. Tiny, discreet, professional. Father's people worked fast and silent. 3 days later, Kalin arrived. He looked like a wreck. Hair uncombed, suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. He carried a pathetic bouquet of roses, red, of course, as if that could erase the blood he'd drawn from me. He fell to his knees beside the bed the moment the door closed behind him. "Zuri, I'm so sorry," he whimpered, voice cracking. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean it. I lost control. It's all Sienna. She seduced me, she manipulated me, I let him ramble, watching him with cold detachment. When he finally paused, gasping for breath, I reached out and stroked his cheek gently, the way one might comfort a frightened child. "Shh, honey," I murmured, soft and soothing. "Let's forget this nightmare. We'll start fresh, a clean slate." Relief flooded his face. Tears welled in his eyes. He pressed his face into my hand like a dog seeking forgiveness. The cameras captured every second, every lie, every fake promise, every desperate plea. The fool believed me. Upon discharge, a convoy of 3 black Escalades with tinted windows waited outside the clinic. Cassius wheeled me out in a wheelchair. Callan stood at the entrance, pale and sweating, trying to smile. Cassius leaned in close to Kalen's ear, but spoke loud enough for me to hear every word. "If anything happens to her, if she gets so much as a bruise, I will find you. And I will send people after you that no amount of money or security can stop. Do you understand?" Kalin nodded frantically, like a bobblehead in a storm. I went home, but it wasn't home anymore. It was a stage, a battlefield. The first thing I did when Kalin left for the office was open his laptop. He hadn't changed his passwords in years. Arrogance and laziness, the downfall of so many men like him. His cloud storage was a treasure trove of filth. Hotel reservations at the peninsula, penthouses in the Gold Coast, dinner receipts from the most expensive restaurants in the city, bank transfers to Sienna, labeled for love, gift, personal expense, thousands of dollars flowing out regularly, and videos, dozens of them, intimate moments he'd recorded without her knowledge, or maybe with it. I didn't care. I copied everything onto an encrypted flash drive. But that wasn't all. Buried deeper were the company files. Apex Construction Group's real financials, off-the-books payments, kickbacks to contractors, fake invoices for work never performed, skimmed profits funneled into personal accounts, massive fraud hidden behind the glossy facade of success. I called Father that same afternoon. "Start buying shares," I told him. Quietly, through shell companies, offshore accounts in the Caymans if needed. He didn't ask how I knew what to do. He just chuckled, low and proud. "You think like a true strategist. Zuri, Cassius will handle the materials for the next phase. We've got a former music video director on payroll now, best editor in the city. The company's 50th Jubilee Gala coincided with what would have been our wedding anniversary, the perfect stage. I wore a deep burgundy couture gown, the cast on my leg deliberately visible beneath the slit. Let them see the damage. Let them whisper. The venue downtown was packed. Investors, politicians, socialites, journalists. My in-laws approached with strained smiles, pretending concern. Sienna lurked in a corner in a white dress, trying to look innocent. Bruises under her eyes had faded to a faint purple shadow. I passed close enough to whisper. "You look like a ghost bride in that dress," I said sweetly. "Especially with that tint under your eyes. Did your nose heal straight, or is it still crooked?" She paled and turned away, hand flying to her face. In the crowd, one man watched me without fear. Tall, impeccably dressed, piercing eyes behind stylish glasses. Orion Sterling. He introduced himself during cocktail hour. "Managing partner, Sterling Investment Group. I've heard many intriguing things about you." "Hopefully not only the bad ones," I replied coolly. He smiled. "Let's say impressive. Shall we speak after the official program? I believe we may have mutual interests." Reginald Kalin Sr., Kalin's father, took the stage for his pompous speech. He praised the company, thanked his son, lauded strong family values, and finally turned to me with a crocodile smile. "And of course, our deepest gratitude to dear Zuri for her patience and unwavering support." The room applauded politely. I stood leaning on an ebony cane inlaid with mother of pearl and raised a hand. "I have a gift as well," I announced into the sudden silence. "An exclusive video presentation. Very revealing." The lights dimmed. The massive screen behind the stage flickered to life. It began with Kalin and Sienna in our marital bed, the date stamp clearly visible. The day I was in surgery. Moans, laughter. Her voice, "When are you going to divorce that fool?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. A glass shattered somewhere. Then bank statements, transfer records, casino debts. And finally, audio of Kalin speaking to a site foreman. "Forget the safety codes. Just get it done on time. After that, let it flood for all I care." Kalin lunged toward the projection booth, face purple with rage. Cassius appeared like a shadow, blocking his path with one massive arm. Sienna shrieked and fled toward the exit, tripping over her dress. I remained calm, microphone in hand. "But I am magnanimous," I said evenly. "I forgive my husband. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to correct them." The room was deathly silent. After the lights came up, Orion approached with 2 glasses of champagne and a leather folder. "Bravo," he said quietly. But that was only the opening act. He opened the folder. Charts, spreadsheets, ownership structures. "The real picture of Apex Group," he explained. "Official debt is reported at 1 level. Actual debt is triple that. Assets siphoned through shell companies. Reputation in free fall after tonight. If we apply continued pressure, short selling, media leaks, we can drive the share price into the ground. In 6 months, the entire company can be acquired for pennies on the dollar." I studied the documents. "My MBA wasn't decorative. You're proposing a hostile takeover." "I'm proposing partnership," he corrected. "I have the capital. You have the inside knowledge and the motivation. Together we dismantle them from within." I looked into his eyes. No pity, no judgment, only respect and ambition. "I think we'll work very well together, Mr. Sterling." He smiled. "Call me Orion." Back at the house, Kalin raged and begged in equal measure. He screamed, he cried. He promised to change. I patted his head like a queen indulging a favored pet. "You should withdraw from the Graves family tender," I suggested casually one evening over dinner. "After what their daughter did to our marriage, can we really trust them?" Fear won over greed. He agreed immediately. Then I asked Father to dig deeper into the Graves family. What he uncovered turned personal revenge into something ancestral. In his secluded country estate surrounded by ancient pines, Father laid out yellowed photographs and documents on a mahogany table. 20 years ago, he said grimly, your mother accidentally filmed Cornelius Graves Sr. beating a construction worker to death on one of their sites. She was going to take the evidence to the police. My stomach dropped. That same night, her car went off the road. Brakes failed. Officially an accident. He slid a photo across the table. Mom's car crumpled against a tree. The Graves and the Kalins covered it up. Paid off detectives. Buried the case. I stared at the image, the room spinning. 3 days later, Father continued, voice like gravel. Constantine Graves, Cornelius's brother, crashed on the highway. Brake line cut. His eyes met mine. That was my response. But they buried that too. Now I understood. This wasn't just about me. I was avenging my mother as well. The plan accelerated. Over the next 6 months, through layered shell companies, we acquired 40% of Apex Construction Group shares. Father's investigators uncovered proof of defective materials used in the Lakeshore Quarter project supplied by a Graves subsidiary. Customs was anonymously tipped about contraband shipments. When the story broke, panic hit the markets. An emergency shareholders meeting was called. I walked into the boardroom on crutches, dressed in sharp black. Representing the largest single block of shares, I moved to suspend Kalin, Jr. from management pending full investigation, I said clearly. The vote was swift, overwhelming. Kalin stared at me like a trapped animal, realizing too late who held the knife. But the war was far from over. That night, as our motorcade sped down Michigan Avenue, a black SUV with no plates began tailing us. Cassius swore under his breath and executed evasive maneuvers, sharp turns, underground garages, vehicle switches. An hour later, we reached a safe house. Now the real danger begins, Cassius warned, checking his weapon. They're desperate. Desperate men do stupid things. He was right. The storm was only beginning. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone in a quiet Lincoln Park neighborhood. The kind of place no one would ever associate with Thaddeus King. Inside, it was fortified, bulletproof glass behind the curtains, steel doors, cameras in every corner. Cassius paced like a caged lion, checking weapons and monitoring feeds on multiple screens. Father sat at the kitchen table, cleaning an old revolver with methodical calm, the way he used to when I was a child and he thought I wasn't watching. 8 months had passed since the gala. 8 months of relentless surgical strikes against the Kalin and Graves empires. We had acquired 62% of Apex Construction Group through a web of shell companies. The share price had plummeted after a series of calculated leaks. Defective rebar in the Lakeshore Quarter project supplied by a Graves subsidiary, falsified safety inspections, environmental violations on multiple sites. The press feasted on the scandal. Investors fled. Banks called in loans. Cornelius Graves was arrested on federal racketeering and smuggling charges after customs seized 3 containers of mislabeled steel at the port of Chicago. The tip came anonymously, of course. Father's people were thorough. Kalin spent his days in a haze of panic and alcohol, watching his world collapse. He still lived in the mansion, but it felt like a mausoleum. I stayed there too, on the surface. The forgiving wife trying to rebuild our marriage. In reality, I was the general directing the siege from inside the walls. And then came the final secret, the one that turned my stomach and sealed their fate. One rainy evening while Kalin was passed out in his study, I went through Reginald Kalin Sr.'s personal accounts. He had been careless in linking them to the family cloud drive. Among the usual offshore transfers and political donations, I found monthly payments of $8,000 to Sienna, labeled medical services. Medical services. For years, I cross-referenced the dates with her social media, subtle posts about health, challenges, long vacations abroad. Then I dug deeper, clinic records in Switzerland, discreetly obtained through father's contacts. A child, born 6 years ago. DNA test requested by Reginald himself, quietly filed away. The father was not Kalin. It was Reginald Kalin Sr. The plan had been cold and calculated. Pass. Sienna's child off as Kalin's eventual heir. Secure the bloodline, keep the money in the family. Sienna would play the loyal mistress-turned-wife once I was discarded. Kalin was too weak to ever suspect. I sat back in the dark office, staring at the screen until the words blurred. This wasn't just betrayal. This was generational rot. I called father immediately. "Send me everything you have on the child," I said, voice flat. "And prepare for the endgame." Reginald's 70th birthday party was held at their sprawling estate in Winnetka, overlooking the lake. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, politicians and CEOs in tuxedos. I arrived late, deliberately. I wore a champagne-colored silk gown that shimmered under the lights. And around my neck, my mother's black pearl necklace. The one she'd worn the day she died. Reginald was in the middle of a toast when I stepped forward and took the microphone from his hand. "I have a special gift for you tonight," I announced, smiling sweetly. The truth. It's always more precious than gold. The massive screen behind him lit up. First, bank transfers from Reginald to Sienna. Then, medical records from the Swiss clinic. Birth certificate. And finally, the DNA test, 99.99% match. Reginald Kalin Sr., biological father. A recording played next, Reginald's voice. Captured by a bug father's team had planted months earlier, little Kalin won't suspect a thing. Sienna plays the part, we get the heir, the money stays in the family. Everyone wins. The room froze. Sienna, standing near the bar in a silver dress, went white as death. Kalin, already drunk, stared at his father in disbelief, then roared and launched himself across the room. Fists flew. Glasses shattered. Guests screamed and backed away. I watched from the stage, arms crossed, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, just a hollow emptiness. A week later, the final assault came. We were driving down Lakeshore Drive after a late meeting with Orion when an armored SUV rammed our vehicle from behind. Cassius swore and swerved, tires screeching. Bullets pinged off the reinforced glass. "Hold on!" he shouted. He executed a perfect J-turn, forcing the attacker into oncoming traffic. Then, from side streets, Father's motorcycle crew appeared, 6 riders in black. Engines roaring like thunder. Shots rang out. The attacking SUV flipped, rolling twice before coming to rest in flames. We didn't stop. That same evening, Cassius received a message. Kalin and Sienna had been kidnapped by independent contractors, a scarred gangster named Victor, someone the Kalins had hired in desperation, demanded a meeting at an abandoned warehouse in the old stockyards. I went, not alone, of course. A full squad followed at a distance, Father's best. The warehouse stank of rust and decay. Victor stood in the center under a single hanging bulb, smirking, scar twisting his face. Kalin and Sienna were on their knees beside him, bound and gagged, faces bruised. "The vultures send a message," Victor said in a thick Eastern European accent. "We finished the Kalins for you. In exchange, territory, South Side roots. Fair deal, yes?" I looked at Kalin. His eyes pleaded. Sienna sobbed quietly. "Did they really think I would come unprotected?" I smiled. "No deal." Father's voice came through my earpiece. "Now." Smoke grenades rolled across the floor. Flashbangs exploded. Gunfire erupted, controlled, precise. 10 minutes later, Victor and his men were zip-tied on the concrete, groaning. Kalin and Sienna were left alive. Barely. We didn't need to kill them. The world would do it for us. 2 days later, we announced the acquisition of the controlling stake in Apex Construction Group, rebranded immediately as North Group. I stood at the press conference podium in a tailored black suit, hair pulled back severely, voice calm and commanding. "North Group will operate under new standards," I said to the flashing cameras. "Transparency, accountability, ethical construction. We will rebuild what was broken, literally and figuratively." The reporters shouted questions about the scandals, the arrests, the mysterious deaths. I answered none of them. That same day, in a federal holding cell, Cornelius Graves suffered a massive heart attack, dead before the guards reached him. The autopsy found traces of a rare toxin, untraceable, exotic. A dead end for investigators. Father's signature. I confronted him that night in his study. "Was that you?" He met my eyes without flinching. "Yes, for your mother. And to keep you safe." I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't. "Enough blood, Dad," I said quietly. "It's over. Let's build something clean now." He looked at me for a long moment, then pulled me into a tight embrace. "You're stronger than I ever was, Zuri." A year later, North Group broke ground on its first project. Affordable housing in underserved neighborhoods. No elite towers. No corner cutting. Real homes for real people. I created a security consulting firm on the side, employing former enforcers, ex-cons, men and women from Father's old world who wanted a second chance. Legitimate contracts. Fair pay. A path out. Father underwent major heart surgery. The prognosis wasn't good. 1 year, maybe 2. He handed me his will one afternoon in the hospital. "I set a bad example," he rasped. "But you can fix everything." I held his hand and said nothing. There was nothing left to fix. The empires had fallen. The circle was closing. But something new was rising from the ashes. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. The Chicago skyline glittered like a promise as Orion drove us up to the rooftop of the North Group headquarters. One late autumn evening. The wind off the lake was sharp, carrying the faint scent of impending winter. But the city lights below, Michigan Avenue's golden glow, the raised bridges over the river, the endless stretch of Lakeshore Drive, felt warmer than any hearth. It was beauty washed in blood, yes, but also beauty reborn. Orion had tried this once before in my office months earlier, pulling a velvet box from his jacket and dropping to one knee. I had asked for time. There was still too much ash in the air, too many ghosts whispering in the corners of my mind. But now, 2 years after the basement, everything had changed. North Group was no longer a vehicle for revenge. It was a force for something better. We had demolished the old Apex towers that were riddled with defects and replaced them with mixed-income housing in Bronzeville and Humboldt Park. Families who had never dreamed of owning homes now held keys in their hands. My secondary company, True, North Security, employed dozens of men and women who once ran the streets for my father. They wore suits now, protected schools and community centers, and mentored kids who looked like they once did, legitimate, proud, redeemed. Father's health had declined faster than the doctors predicted. The heart surgery bought him time, but not enough. He spent his final months in the country estate among the ancient pines, watching the seasons turn. I visited every weekend, bringing designs for new projects, photos of groundbreaking ceremonies, updates on the people he had quietly helped transition to honest lives. One afternoon, as snow began to dust the ground outside his window, he took my hand. "I lived wrong for a long time," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "But you turned my darkness into light. I'm proud of you, baby girl. Prouder than any empire I ever built." I wore my mother's black pearl necklace that day, the one I had reclaimed as my talisman. He touched it gently. "She would be proud too," he murmured. "You gave her the justice she never got, and you built the normal life she wanted for the next generation." He passed 3 weeks later, peacefully, in his sleep. The funeral was small, no media, just family, caches, a few old loyalists who had gone straight, and Orion. We buried him beside an empty plot reserved for Mother, under the pines he loved. I didn't cry that day. I had cried enough. Instead, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. The circle had truly closed. Now, on the rooftop, Orion took my hands. The city sparkled below us like scattered diamonds. "Zuri King," he said, using my maiden name, the one I had taken back legally after the divorce. "I've waited long enough. I don't need more time. I just need you." He knelt, the same velvet box in his hand. The antique emerald ring caught the city lights and threw them back like green fire. "Marry me. Let me stand beside you, not to save you, not to lead you, but to build the rest of this life with you." I looked out over Chicago one last time, the city that had broken me, remade me, taught me what strength really meant. "Yes," I said. "Now, yes." We married quietly 6 months later in spring, when the magnolias were blooming along the lakefront. The ceremony was held in the garden of the country estate. Cassius gave me away, his massive hand gentle on my arm. I wore a simple ivory gown I had designed myself. Clean lines, no extravagance, and Mother's black pearls. Orion waited at the altar in a charcoal suit, eyes shining. Father's absence was a soft ache, but his presence was everywhere. In the pines whispering overhead, in the people who had come because of the second chances he and I had given them, in the knowledge that he had walked me down this path as far as he could. At the reception, under a tent strung with fairy lights, Orion pulled me aside. "I have one more surprise," he said. He led me to a small table where a sonogram image waited in a silver frame. The tech had called that morning to confirm. "You're pregnant," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. I stared at the tiny blur on the screen, the first glimpse of our child. "If it's a girl," I said, tears finally coming, "we'll call her Lily, like Mom." He wrapped his arms around me, and we stood there as the music played softly and laughter rose around us. Our honeymoon was spent in a villa on Lake Como, terraces overlooking water so blue it hurt to look at. One morning, as the sun rose in a blaze of pink and gold, I stood on the balcony with Orion's arms around me from behind, his hands resting gently on my still flat stomach. For the first time in years, I felt peace, deep, unshakable peace. The black pearls shimmered against my skin in the early light. They were no longer just a reminder of loss and vengeance. They were a bridge from a mother who dreamed of a normal life for her daughter, to a daughter who had walked through fire to create one, to the child I carried who would never know that darkness. Revenge had carved its path through blood and ruin, but it had led here, to this quiet terrace, this sunrise, this future. The story was finished. The circle had closed. And something new, something gentle, something ordinary, something extraordinary had begun. There would be no more basements. No more monsters. No more empires built on lies. Only light, only love, only the measured, quiet rhythm of a life finally, truly lived. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.